Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. Hi, my name's Amy. It's lovely to meet you. On this channel I post about frugal living and feeding your family on a budget. So if you like that kind of thing, I'd love it if you would press that subscribe button if you want to stick around and hear more from me. Okay, so in today's video I want to talk about food prices and food shortages and how you can still manage to keep your food budget down even though we've got all of this stuff going on. Everybody knows the prices have gone up. There's a massive hike in certain things have gone up by less, but overall everything is definitely on the way up. But there is also a lot of shortages at the moment, which means that sometimes some of the cheaper products just aren't available, and then that can make things tricky as well to work within our budgets. So I did do a video like this a couple of years ago, but obviously certain things have changed. Nothing within that video is not relevant, so I'll pop a link to that below, and also I'll stick a card up there. So that video is still relevant, but I just feel like there's quite a lot to add now, so I thought it was about time I did another one. So this is basically a list of 15 things that I personally do to keep my food budget down, and I think that they will help. Basically, if you're not already doing these things, I do think it's worth just considering maybe implementing one or two and seeing whether you can reduce your budget slightly or just help you to stick within your current budget. I know a lot of you are already budgeting, you're already living frugally, and it can then seem quite daunting when the prices are going up and it's like, well, I've got to cut back even more. Like, how do I do it? So I just thought I'd put together these tips for you. Like I say, they're things that I do. They may work for you, they may not work for you. This is just based on my own experience. So the first thing is to keep an inventory of what you have in your house. Now, that's something you could do just before you go food shopping, or it's something that you can keep sort of a running list of as to what you have on hand in your house. So that's fridge, freezer and general pantry items. By knowing what you've already got, it makes it much easier to keep your costs down. So we use an Excel spreadsheet, and I know that sounds very over the top, but we have an Excel spreadsheet that goes through all of our food that we have in the house, so that when something needs topping up, I can just go and top it up. But also, when coming on to my next point, when we meal plan, I can meal plan from the inventory. So yeah, second thing is to meal plan from your inventory or from what you've already got. So rather than creating a meal plan and then checking off things that you already have that you then don't need to buy, if you can keep an inventory of what you already have, you can keep your cost lower by just shopping from that first, working out exactly what meals you can make from what you have on hand. Then you can keep your food budget lower. The next thing is to stock up your pantry every time you shop. Now, I don't mean doing like a full stock up, that would be crazy, but just if you can buy one extra item or two extra items each time you're shopping, it will start to build you up a really healthy pantry very quickly. Even if you're starting from scratch, it doesn't take long to build up if you're able to do it every time you shop. So I tend to try and buy at least one or two items every week, firstly to replace what I'm using, but also to just give me a top up on other things. If I know that I'm starting to run low on certain things, I can top those items up. It just kind of gives me peace of mind that I know that if I don't have sort of a full prepper pantry or anything like that, I'm just well stocked on things I know we use regularly, so that if there are food shortages on particular items that I know that we use, or if there's crazy price hikes, or just if something happens and we can't get to a shop, I know that I've got those things on hand to make meals with. Tip number 4 is to find out what there is in your local area in terms of sort of community projects to do with waste food. This is something that we do a lot. This isn't food banks, this is waste food, so food from supermarkets that would have just been going to landfill. Look, there's lots of different projects now all over the country popping up. There's a few local to us that we use. I don't use them every week because they are a drive away, so I kind of batch it in. If I have something in that particular area, I can add in a trip as well. But they really help keep the cost low. A lot of them are sort of a set price for like a hamper. So you'll have different products and vegetables and fruit, and you might have meat products in there, you might have dairy products. So our local ones do vegetarian hampers. So it really is a good mix and is a really good place to start for the week. If I am getting one of those hampers, I will wait until I've got that before I then do a meal plan, because I can meal plan around what I've got. Again, it comes back to the using what I've already got to help me form my meal plan rather than doing it the other way around. So if you just have a Google, it can be really tricky to find these things. They can come up under loads of different names, but we have some that are called community larders, community pantries. We also have like waste projects, so food waste projects. You can look into that. Facebook's a really good place. You can kind of keep an eye on there, and just try and look in different local groups to see whether anybody is recommending anything like that. That's how I found ours. They weren't easy to come by. It took me a while to find some in our local area, but it's been well worth putting that time in to find them. The other thing is to use apps as well. So there's things like the Too Good To Go app and the, probably pronouncing this completely wrong, but Olio app as well. Now, both of those are to do with sort of waste food. So Too Good To Go is supermarkets and shops and pubs and restaurants will put on any spare food that they have at the end of the day, and you can then purchase like they call them magic bags. So those can be quite good. I do find with Too Good To Go, it's very popular. So if you know there's somewhere that you want to be able to go, if you look at the time that it previously sold out the day before, that's generally a good time to go on. If you go on just a few minutes before it's sold out, quite often that's when the products are being listed. And the Olio app, again, sorry if I'm butchering the name, but that is where people locally can post any spare food that they have, and they offer for somebody to come and collect. Now, on there's also something called food helpers. Now, they are volunteers and you can sign up and become one. So they're volunteers that will go to the supermarkets and collect the food, and then they will keep part of that food and then they will list the rest of it. So that's another way that you can just keep your budget down. Again, it's not something we use all the time. It's something we kind of keep an eye on, and if there's something that we particularly need that I know I would be buying, then I would request that item and potentially go and pick it up. So next up is batch cooking, and by that I mean using up what you have. So if you buy in ingredients for a particular recipe and you're only using part of the ingredients, sometimes you'll find that if you don't have something else to use those ingredients in, the food can end up going to waste. So instead, just make extra portions. This is also something that, particularly now with energy costs rising, if you can make a double batch of something, it won't keep your overall cost down. Well, it will do if it would mean you wasting the food, but otherwise it can keep the cost down on the fuel cost of cooking that particular item, because then you will just have to reheat. So if I'm making a shepherd's pie or a lasagna or whatever I'm making, I can always do like a double batch of it, cook it, so that then I've got one that's really easy for us to have as a family meal when we need it. Also, cooking meals that you actually enjoy eating. Any meal that you cook that you don't actually want to eat is going to go to waste, and if you're wasting food, it's money in the bin. So anything you can do to make whatever meal you're cooking something that you actually enjoy eating, that will overall help your food budget. Because also, if you are filling up on food you want, you're less likely to want the more expensive kind of snacky items or takeaways or anything like that. So the other thing is to shop around for offers and deals on food that you know you're going to use regularly. So I use the supermarket websites to check on any offers on anything that I like to use or that I know we're going to use a lot of. And then if something is on a particularly good offer, I can go and sort of buy in bulk. But you do need to be careful with this, because you don't want to end up shopping in loads of different places to get good offers on everything you're buying. You need to sort of work out where is going to be cheapest overall. So I always tend to compare my shopping to the Tesco app, just because I find that it's quite a good sort of mid-range price for everything, and it gives me kind of a baseline price. So I'll have my shopping list, I will have a look at the different supermarket websites, and then I will go through on the Tesco app and compare it on there to see what kind of prices everything is. And that can also then help me decide where I'm actually going to do my shopping. Now with Lidl, where I do like to shop, you can't view all of their prices online, but you can see their different offers on meat and vegetables and things like that. You can see all of that on the Lidl app. You can view their sort of weekly leaflets that they do. So that's really, really useful. But basically, however you can find to be able to compare prices without you having to go around every single supermarket, because obviously that traveling is going to be expensive. Also, if you do find an offer on something that you know that you're going to use a lot and it's a good offer, then it's always worth it, if you can afford to, buying extra of that item and then keeping it in stock, as it were, in your own kitchen, so that then you know that long term that is going to save you money. Obviously this comes down to the amount of storage that you've got, and if you do have any extra room in your food budget to purchase extra of the item. But if you can, even if it's just every so often, it will help long term to save you quite a lot of money. So any leftovers that you have that don't get eaten, rather than putting them in the bin, freeze them or keep them in the fridge for lunch the next day, anything like that. And if you have any veg or meat or anything that is sort of getting to the point where it needs using up and you know you're not going to use it, freeze it. Just chop it and freeze it. There are certain vegetables that you should blanch beforehand, and don't try and freeze anything if it contains a lot of water. So anything like lettuce and those kind of things, don't freeze those because they will just be horrible. But generally with vegetables, just chop them up and freeze them. Same goes for meat, just stick it in the freezer, just make sure it's in some sort of airtight container and it will stay good for a while, and then it gives you an extra chance to use it. And then when you come to be doing your shop the next week or month or however you shop, it will then be part of your inventory and you can meal plan from that. The other thing that I like to do a lot is to have one main ingredient and then cook several different types of meals from that main ingredient. So if I buy a gammon joint, for example, I would make 4 or 5 different meals out of that. We might not be having gammon every night of the week. I might make some and freeze some, but it just stretches out that initial purchase. I do it particularly with things that we're having for like Sunday roast, which we try and do every week. So we'll have whatever meat it was for the Sunday roast, and then I will stretch that on for leftovers into specific meals for either the rest of the week or, like I say, freeze them for future use. But that just helps keep the price down, because it also helps keep on top of portion sizes, because generally speaking, and it is a generalization, but generally speaking, meat is the most expensive part of the meal. And as a nation, again, generalizing, but generally we eat too much as a portion size. So if you can reduce the portion size of the meat down and increase the vegetables and the carbohydrates and everything else that's going with it, then you can reduce the overall cost of your meal and just make that meat, which is the more expensive bit, stretch that bit further. This one I think is really important as well, because it's something that I've actually been I've been stung on with this, is to check your price per quantity rather than just your price. Because I think it's very easy to just assume that the bulk buy items are going to be cheapest. Sometimes that's not the case. Classic one in pretty much all supermarkets that I've come across is like big bags of pasta. So 3 kilo bags of pasta. I quite often see those for sort of around about the £3 mark, when you can get a 500 gram bag of pasta for 29p. So that obviously works out a lot cheaper. But looking at it, it's kind of shown almost as if the big bag is going to save you money. So just pay attention to your price per quantity, so whether that's per kilo or per litre or whatever it happens to be. The other thing is that the branded versions versus like the value ranges, sometimes if there's a particularly good offer on a brand, it can actually make it cheaper than the value version. And sometimes just one step up in the supermarket is actually cheaper per quantity of item compared to the value. Generally speaking, again, I'm generalizing, this is going to be my big thing of this one, I think. Generally speaking, value brands will be cheapest, but do just double check it, because otherwise you can just get caught out on it and end up spending more than you actually need to. Always try and buy your herbs and spices, if you have the ability to, from a specialist supermarket. You will find that these work out a lot cheaper. However, if you don't have the ability to, if there aren't any local to you, if it's just cost prohibitive, then do check the world food aisle of your supermarket. They will be much cheaper. I tend to find that it's at least half the price, but quite often it's more of a saving than 50%. You can actually get a larger quantity in a bag usually than you would get in a sort of jar, the little spice jars, but you will generally be spending less money. Bulking out your meals. So like I said about the portion size of meat and the fact that you can reduce that, try bulking out some of your meals. So you can bulk out with so many different items. I use pretty much anything I can find. I will bulk out with vegetables, I'll bulk with potatoes, lentils, oats, beans, anything I can get my hands on really. But bulking out those meals just makes the more expensive part of the meal stretch, and it also gets some added kind of veg and all those sorts of good things into the meal. And finally, don't be afraid to swap ingredients out in recipes. So if you're in a supermarket and you can't get hold of the item that you need for a specific recipe, have a think about what else you may have or what else you could use to substitute for it. So different meats will quite often substitute quite well for each other. You can change your herbs and spices depending on what you like and what you have on hand, because you're not going to have every single spice. I mean, you might be lucky enough to do that. You might have every single herb and spice that you can ever imagine, but generally speaking, people don't have that. You have the herbs and spices that you like, so switch some out if you need to, and just play about with things so that you end up with a meal that's both affordable and really tasty. So I hope you found that helpful. Those are some of the things that I do to help keep our food budget down. It's something that we've been considering a lot in our house recently, as we have noticed the prices creeping up. And even though I do all of these things, it's not like I'm not affected by it. Our budget is still having to stretch to fit everything in and keep us all well fed. I hope there are some tips in there that you can maybe start to implement if you're not already. There are loads of different ways you can start to reduce your food budget, but it really is a personal thing. It depends how you eat, it depends how you shop, it depends on what you have available to you locally. So just see what works for you. So if you've liked that video, please give me a thumbs up, and I would love it if you would subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!